Well, thank you everyone for joining us to another episode of Verse Talks. I am delighted to welcome Rhea Myers to our pod today. Thank you so much for joining us, Rhea. Um, Rhea is an artist, a hacker, a writer, and she's been around since the 1990s working as an artist. And since 2014, she's been focusing on producing art centered around the concept of the blockchain. I think it's actually quite nice to hear from you, Ria, how it all started, because I was listening to quite a lot of podcasts that you were in, and I found it very interesting how you speak about the very early days of the culture more around the blockchain, and I was wondering if you can take us to the very beginning. You started in art school. What happened? What then drew you into the world of blockchain?
What went wrong at art school?
what
So,
what did they say to you?
what did they do? I went to art school in England in the 1990s. I did my art foundation year at Kingston University in Kingston upon Thames. I did my art BA at Canterbury College of Art. At the time, it was part of the Kent Institute of Art and Design, but it really didn't view itself in that way. It was still Canterbury College of Art. And then I did my MA at the Centre for Electronic Arts at Middlesex University. And
I want to ask you something while you're going.
yes.
When you decided to study art, I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming it wasn't for the reasons of I just love paintings and drawings. What was it that made you want to study? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it
No,
did.
no. So
Maybe
that's
it was.
that's a really good question. So I certainly wasn't someone who had looked at contemporary fine art or sort of the books of Renaissance paintings and thought, oh yes, I want to become a painter or a sculptor, and I have great talent in this direction. Um, when I was a kid, it was the height of trying to get people to use computers. So I had books on computing from the school book club, and one of them had a picture of Harold Cohen and his Aeron drawing program slash turtle at the time, and that just stuck with me. So, like from when I was a very small child, I knew it was possible to make art with
Mm.
computers. So I thought, yeah, I'd
Hmm.
quite like to do that, please. And I loved comic books. I loved special effects in movies. I loved graphic design. Graphic design in the 80s was very tied to music and to popular culture. So there was this mix of sort of comics, music, literature, design, and technology starting to glue it all together. So yeah, I was interested in the technology, but not because I was any good at mathematics either. I was interested in the technology because it was very much part of the culture,
Mm.
and I felt that it was an interesting direction to take. And also, the cooler older kids I knew were going to art school, and when I was choosing where to go for college, there was a recession on, so I wasn't going to get a job on the other side of it anyway. So I managed to convince my parents that I should definitely go to art school. And so, excuse me, when when I went there, it was still the case that the British state would pay for you to go to college.
Mm.
And I'm always very clear about this. Sort of, I benefited massively from the support of a paternalistic but financially supportive state in the last years of that being a thing. So my art career advice is not worth very much in the current era, because go back in time
Mm,
and go to college at the end of the post-war social settlement is not the best advice that can be operationalized.
How do you think you'd be thinking about that same decision today?
Um, I don't know, because the UK, even when I was at college, it was obsessed with I think it's what Mark Fisher called market ontology. You know, the idea that everything has to be a money making enterprise, and the model for that, of course, is America, despite the contradictions that the US itself contains regarding that. And the idea that you go to university or you go to college because it increases your earning potential in the market was very popular when I
mm,
was going to college, but wasn't priced in to what you were paid when you actually got a job, because everyone was used to the idea that you weren't massively in debt because you'd gone to college because the state had paid for you to go. So I don't know that that's got any better. Like I might have done it and been massively in debt, or I might have got a service job and sort of pestered artists online to tell me how to do things. But the sort of the control in all of this is I massively lacked social skills. So getting a job or approaching an artist or anything like that would have been completely terrifying to me. And sort of going to college where you have to be forced into a room and do things worked quite well for me. But
mm,
yeah,
mm,
I genuinely don't know what I would do now, because the world is so different.
mm,
Yeah, there is a lot, because sort of when I was learning to program, I had sort of one book on how to program Macintosh applications, one book on Macintosh games programming, and as many hard copy versions of Inside Macintosh as I could grab. And now you have all of the online courses, you have all of the sort of shared repos of code that you can look at, and you have people you can ask. I should revise that. When I was learning graphics programming, I learned programming in BASIC on a little 8-bit Welsh computer called the Dragon 32, which was lovely and I still miss.
it's got a great name, that's for sure. So you went to art school in the 1990s. 4 years?
I'm so sorry.
So
I was clicking. What did you say?
I said so after art school, after you attended art school
Oh
in
yes,
in the
yes,
UK, what
yes,
happened then?
yes. So by 90, stop that phone. I'm already awake. Yeah, so by 97, I was out of art school and I'd realised I did not have the social skills to get any kind of career in the contemporary art world. It was sort of the Britpop and YBA art era, and even ignoring the fact that I didn't fit that aesthetically, I wasn't very good at meeting people at parties. So I'd had
You mean like working in
sort
the
of
kind of gallery museum
yeah,
side?
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
couldn't schmooze my way into anything in particular. So I'd had like 2 weeks of Java programming training and a week of HTML, which immediately meant that I had about as much experience of developing for the web as it was possible to have at that time. So through my then partner, I got into some roles in industry, in the tech industry, working on sort of um, websites and programming Java backends for things, and sort of being in meetings where very, very angry, very, very rich, very, very bald men were shouting down conference phone connections about why the incredibly expensive leased line they'd paid to connect to a financial database was sending them null characters when it wasn't meant to. And I was just sat there going, I'm an art student. I'm just going to treat this as some sort of artistic study, as a sort of anthropological investigation into this culture, which I did for the next 20 years or so. And sort of my interest in less usual things served me well in that time, because when I was at art school, we were taught how to program the Macintosh because it was the best for graphics at that time.
Mm.
And I sort of, they had some
You taught how
next
to program it.
stations. Yeah. Yes,
Cool.
it's C and graphics. Yes, quite a mind expander if you had an arts background. But we had some very, very, very good lecturers there, like the late Hugh Jones. Sort of taught those of us who are terrified of mathematics how to do different kinds of numbers without fear, and that was really amazing. It was very empowering. So yeah, we were taught how to program the Macintosh and sort of various bits of mathematics that were massively above my pay grade previously, and so the cultural background as well. It was a fairly unique course at that time, with apologies to everyone else who gets upset when I say this and they say, "What about the course at wherever?" And I'm like, "That's fine," but the sort of the precise balance of people who very much knew what they were doing in terms of the culture and the technology and
Mm.
the hardware and the software side of the technology, and how they all went together was very, very, very strong there. If I'm not allowed to say unique because it upsets people. So yeah, having done all of this and gone into industry to research it, um, sort of my experience in obscure things like how to program the Macintosh, how to program Next computers, which Apple then purchased and eventually used the same software and programming language for the iPhone,
Mm.
and how to program Linux or GNU Linux for RMS and chums. Like these were not
I mean,
prime
that's an
skills, you know.
incredible jump, though, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
going from
yeah,
being an artist to programming
yeah.
a
I was
computer.
treated it as art.
Yeah.
There's like there's a famous book called Hackers and Painters, by a guy who accidentally became a millionaire during the .com boom, and therefore thinks that he
How did he?
understands the world much better than he does. But sort of the state of flow, of sort of time losing engagement where you are programming and where you are drawing, whatever, those are the same, and the dealing with sort of symbol sets and technical problems are the same. But with apologies with everyone who loses themselves in the painting, you can fall off of a bridge, you can't fall off of a painting. Paintings don't crash. Software does. So there's definite differences, but I always treated it as this sort of social and
Mm.
creative engagement, and had an absolutely fascinating time seeing sort of Seattle and San Jose and Silicon Roundabout and in the UK, which was only ever used as a joking name by people there. But yeah, it was an ongoing project, and I worked on games, I worked on pre-press, all these different ways of making making images, of making cultural experiences using technology in the way that they were being done at the time, not in a I'm here, I'm an artist, I'm here to criticize what you're doing and tell you why it's wrong and make art about this. It's very much, no, this actually has to work and people have to be able to use it, and it has a job to do, which is a very different way of looking at technology from my art school experience of, okay, how do I break the PostScript printer? How do I write
Yeah.
a virus? The sort of, from breaking things to actually being the person who will get the call if it stops working is quite a jump.
So, sorry, were you saying that it did feel like an art form when you were creating like software?
So
When you're creating, when you know where you're going, isn't that different from just like?
So it's tricky. If you have the artistic problem of painting a portrait, unless you are really, really, really trying to upset the sitter, you want something that, from your point of view and from the point of view of the person or institution that's hopefully going to give you some money at the end of it, you're hoping to get some sort of defensible relationship between the photons that hit the sitter and the photons that hit the creams you smear on the plant matter. So that there is a task to perform there, and that there are sort of culturally agreed on competent and incompetent ways of achieving that task, and competent and incompetent ways of evaluating the results of performing that task. Like I said earlier, a painting can't crash. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci is notorious for using media which want to slide off of the wall or soak into the canvas. You can get a painting materially wrong in terms of it fading or cracking quickly. So I was over egging things a bit there. But ultimately, we come down to the question of utility. Software that's written as a tool versus, the painting, which I'm using here as the exemplar of an artwork, versus an artwork that has some sort of experiential value rather than use value. It's this, it's the it's sort of, I collect bad but defensible definitions of art, and one of my favourites is that art is defined by its inutility. Art is something that has no use value. It has exchange
No
value,
use.
but it's not something you can use to do something else with, rather than for it to be an artwork. And this doesn't mean it has no social function. It doesn't mean it doesn't have a use within society. It just means it is not, using it as a ironing board,
Yeah.
as in the
I would
surrealist
like
manner,
to
is
see
a
your
category
collection.
error.
I'd like to see your collection of great definitions on art, because I have
I've been
no
making art
definition.
about it for decades now. It's
That's
yes,
true.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you sort of took on, well, you kind of took a step away from your more full-on artistic career, and were
yes,
being creative. Really, you were
yes,
approaching it in an artistic way. I'm imagining it was a bit of a day job that you took on. Not a bit. It
yes,
sounded
yeah.
like you
To
were full on.
to the disappointment of the entire IT industry, I did just treat it as a day job rather than a sacred task. Um, I once had a manager who sort of mumbled to me, "So what are you going to be working on this weekend?" And I just ignored him until he stopped mumbling. And it's like, no, sort of, and it was so
That's an
sort of
interesting way of making
seeing,
someone work.
yes,
What do
like
you?
seeing seeing executives who sort of had shares or would receive bonuses, incapable of understanding how employees on a fixed wage
Mm.
differed from them in terms of emotional investment in the corporation was absolutely fascinating. It's like, my dude, every minute you work will make you more money. Every minute I work makes me less money because I'm doing more work for the same amount
Mm.
of wages. And I worked at one place, not one of the ones I ever talk about publicly, where one year we were told, no, there's not enough money to give anyone, pay increase despite the rate of inflation. And about 6 weeks later, one of the executives drove in his nice new Porsche. And
Mm.
sort of, it was like, yeah, I can see why there isn't any money for
Mm.
sort of wage increases. So
Mm.
you'll forgive me if I'm not, aligned with the sacred task of the company. I mean, that said, I just need to cough, sorry. That said, I have also worked in startups and sort of been one of those executives in startups. So I've seen it from both
Both
sides.
sides.
And yeah,
Did that change the way you thought about it?
no, no. I felt like a comic book villain. It was like, it's like, yeah, yes, I have more experience than you. Yes, I can reason about the big picture more effectively than you due to the information that I have and probably my art school background. But no, I'm not a more worthwhile or harder
Mm.
working per se human being than you, and I'm getting some psychic damage from having to maintain this social form. The most recent experiences I had in startup land were wonderful, and I got to see inside a tech accelerator, a blockchain accelerator, which was absolutely fascinating and sort of really did underline the advantages of treating this as like an anthropological investigation,
Mm.
because it's sort of looking at it from that point of view. It was the social reproduction of bourgeois ideology. It was the social reproduction of capital. It was sort of, you are the raw material. You have some talent which could either go into revolutionary thought or maintaining the system. And we're going to get you sort of invested in and inspired by people who have been successful within the system in terms of generating pools of capital, and teach you how to think like them and how to feel like them, how to
Mm.
see the world as they do, and how to feel about the world as they do. And that was just so utterly fascinating to experience without sort of wanting or needing to go, oh yes, I will, put on the goggles that you are handing me and see the world like this. And yeah, that sort of, if I'd been an artist and said, hello, can I sit in on this? I'm sure they would have let me. That they might have made me sign an NDA or something, but it's sort of being there as part of the sausage rather than part of the wall painter was a very informative experience. And they
Mm.
also had a Nintendo 64, so that was really fun.
If they see it in that
And
way, how do you see it?
How do I see what? Sorry.
Um, if that's like their model of how to look at work and
Oh, so like we all need someone, we all need food and water and somewhere to sleep, and um sort of each time I encounter someone who is like, yeah, I just want to do subsistence farming, some friends and I are going to get together on a farm, and I'm like, you're not going to enjoy that. Like when I was a kid, we used to go camping and sort of gather firewood and sort of prepare meals together and stuff because we were members of a sort of a militant offshoot of the scouting organisation. or the rump of that. And so that experience of spending most of your day on basic labour, just to not get cold or hungry that night. It's nice sitting around a fire with your friends, but we were still getting the food from the store. We weren't having to hunt deer or fish or to grow crops or anything. So we need sort of. I am very much team industrial civilization. Sorry, everyone. And capitalism is its current mode of organisation. It's giving way to what Mackenzie Wark quite correctly identified as something worse, where rather than trying to get returns on capital, people seem to be trying to mostly avoid tax on capital or burn it in really bizarre new forms of class war. But the straight answer is that I see their worldview as a particular viewpoint from a particular role in a particular way of trying to find returns on capital investment that, with the best will in the world, is closer to rolling a dice than to reading the newspaper and going, hang on, I've just spotted this amazing opportunity. I will invest in this due to my Randian insight and genius. It's like you're investing in 100 companies all doing the same thing. One of them is bound to make some money, but human beings can't cope with that randomness. They can't cope with sort of, on top of their privilege, luck being the thing that gets them the reward. So you have this entire ideology of startups, of acceleration, of not in the political sense of like startup accelerators where you sort of cookie cut whatever someone's doing in a way which should maximize development and growth. And it's like, sort of to go against what I said earlier about the going from breaking it to making it, I guess. Sort of, if you look at the companies that don't make it, what's different is not generally the magic ingredient of having the correct ideology or the correct spreadsheets. There are factors that are excluded by this, and I've seen them very much at work. And it's very difficult being a feminist and sort of being at startup pitches, because the and race and sexuality and everything else apply to this. Sort of, the people who have the money are looking for mirrors. They are looking for little mirrors to come on the stage to reflect their egos, and they will then put the money into the mirror, and they know that they've that whatever goes right or wrong, that the reflection of their ego will have done the right thing, because it's them and they did the right thing. And that's what I mean about social reproduction. It's sort of sort of training people up to be good little venture capital slash serial entrepreneur avatars. And if you're if you're a woman, or if you are not of the correct social class, or
So
if
when you
you
say
are
training up, do you mean VCs doing the training?
I mean, certainly, sort of, when VCs invest, that they know the right way to do things. Like you sort of, I've seen interesting experiments in what to do with money, but for the most part, you have a burn rate, you have a series of spreadsheets. You can't do this or that. You have to do this and that. You end up with these little cookie cutter corporations of the kind that Toys R Us isn't anymore, and that removes a variable of blame or responsibility in their mind, where it's like, we know the form that the organisational form that should work. We will recreate it. If it doesn't work, we tried our best, and the aesthetics of this form, sort of the darker your skin, the higher your voice, the further from a nice college you are, for some reason, the less able you are to recreate the aesthetics of this form, and it's a mystery why that might be. But I like money and I like technology, so yeah.
I mean, it feels like we're going off into a different direction, but we're not, because I think a lot of your work, no, we're not though, because I think your core interest, like your art practice, is very much driven by that culture, by the culture that you've worked directly in and that you're observing right now. And I want to go back actually again to the beginning, because I
Can I just ask
remember
one
you.
question on? Actually, no. It's maybe too much of a rabbit hole.
This is
Ask
dangerous,
me afterwards. It's all
dangerous,
good.
dangerous territory for Jamie. He's not going to let you go. But I want to go back a little bit, because I was I was listening to this podcast when you were talking about the early days of blockchain, and that kind of culture that it brought on, and
Yes,
how
yes,
excited you were about that, and
yes,
how you were attending these meetings in these basements with like projectors, and
yes,
of course this is like a really nice thing to imagine. Just when things were really early, you were one of the very first people who was, part of this new movement. Like, what were you thinking? What was going on?
yeah. So I am I am not a visionary. I am very, very bad at spotting new trends. I describe myself as a late early adopter, and so in the 90s, that sort of imagine it's the mid 90s. Like, the internet is this new exciting thing. Net art is this amazing engagement between art and the possibilities and the dangers of the internet. You have things like Toy War, where people did denial of service attack as art and legally got away with it. And I kind of didn't notice any of that. I was very interested in computers as a printmaking medium. And by the early 2000s, I was looking back and thinking, wow, that was actually really interesting. I'd then sort of gone through the wonderful piece of net art. My boyfriend came back from the war, which had absolutely convinced me that there was something to net art that
He came back from the
was.
war. Did you say
Oh
he
no,
came back
sorry,
from?
sorry. It's the not my boyfriend. It's the piece of net art by Oily. God, I can't pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. It's the piece of art titled "My Boyfriend Came Back
Oh,
from the
I
War,"
see. I know which one you
and
mean. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm massively, massively sorry. I'm so bad at names. But anyway, so yeah, I'd sort of encountered and played through that, and that's not an
Mhm.
experience you could get any other way. And I was just fascinated by how that had used the technology in a positive way. Again, it wasn't, oh, let's break the technology to comfort the emotional and ideological investments of people for whom technology just doing its thing and working isn't something that they can really say much about. Let's sort of use this technology to get across this experience of alienation and very, very emotional experience, which sort of from the get-go I was very interested in the sort of gap between this sort of idea of computers as very cold and unfeeling, and the actual ability to get emotions across in them. And so I had to sort of go back and go, okay, what did I miss and why? Because I'd been to events in London, in the UK, where I was at the time in the 90s, where you sort of were in these sort of buildings that hadn't been bombed in the Second World War and smelled of 200 years of damp and were being rented out for art events because no one who needed health and safety approval would be able to rent them out, and sort of cramming thousands of pounds worth of technology into them to shine images on walls or bounce things around on the floor. And so I recognised that sort of the sort of .com cultural excitement of this is a world-changing technology. This is a technology that affords us a new way to make a living and to make art, and the way that promoted itself culturally and socially. And so when my fiance, then wife, imported me to Vancouver in Canada, I wasn't able to work for what I thought would be 3 or 4 months, but turned out to be 18 months, which was a very stressful time because I had 3 or 4 months of cash. I didn't have 18 months of it. So I was walking around rapidly gentrifying suburban Vancouver and taking the bus and the SkyTrain, the little automatic train, which was really fun, downtown to go to, again, these very, very damp buildings, which if you needed health and safety approval, you would not be able to rent out. And I saw young people with that same fire in their eyes, that same belief that they could change the world and get rich, or get rich and change the world, or get rich or change the world. And I thought, right, I have seen this before, and I didn't recognise the importance of it. I missed the signal last time. There is something here. I already knew about Bitcoin and the blockchain, obviously. Like, this was 2014, so this is like 5 years after Bitcoin was released. It was 3 years after I first encountered Bitcoin and lost all of the Bitcoin I bought because I hadn't understood change addresses when I handcrafted the transaction and sent it. Once again, not a visionary. So I just really, really got to know this cultural scene. It was the sort of the Dogecoin scene when I started, because that was newly
And is
out.
this why
And
you were working at Dapper Labs then? Did you then start at Dapper
no,
Labs?
Dapper came sometime later. So as I mention, and as I will repeat under oath, I was unemployed at the time. So I was hanging out at Decontrol in Vancouver a lot, which is like a hacker space. And yeah, so I had the
And sorry,
time.
and
Sorry, yeah.
how did you come across it?
That's an extremely good question. I don't remember. I must have found out about it online. There must have been like a mailing list or a Facebook post, given the era, advertising a related event. Because at the start of 2015, I reviewed Eric Zepka's show, Computers and Capital, which was alongside an event that wasn't at Decontrol but had lots of the people there. And so I guess I would have found, I'm thinking about it now, I would probably have found out about it from there. But like, being in the town where like the first, sorry, Seattle, the first actual, hey, let's do an artistic view of cryptocurrency, as was at the time, had taken place, and reviewing that for Furtherfield, the arts organisation in the UK I'm still associated with, who are awesome. So reviewing that, and then going and seeing the events at Decontrol just really cemented the idea that there was something culturally and sort of ideologically, culturally happening there. And yeah, I had the time to sort of sit down and go, I didn't do A-level maths. I stopped doing mathematics at age 16. The only mathematics I've done since then was for computer graphics, taught by an absolute genius who could teach art students who had stopped doing mathematics at age 16 how to do matrix multiplication. So I had to sit down and very, 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 very slowly work through the ideas and the technology, and that sort of hard won understanding meant that I couldn't just go, oh yeah, this is sort of this is ECC and SHA-256. These are not the best technologies. We should be using ring signatures and SHA-3 or whatever. It was sort of, I had to come to it as my first encounter with these ideas. So I was sort of cryptocurrency native rather than an experienced mathematician sort of coming to it. And that gave me an interesting position to look at it, and the sort of just being parachuted into the cultural scene suddenly and going, oh wow, yes, I want to know more about this, also gave me a sort of figure ground relationship between my prior knowledge and my prior understanding of things and what I was experiencing there.
And was the kind of instinctive reaction, well, how can I create artworks on and around?
Yes, very, very definitely, yeah. Because I mean, I make art to understand things. It's my way of understanding the world, and sort of I made things like, and we're going to talk about the art now. So I made Facecoin, the original Facecoin, to understand how on earth the blockchain works, because it's a little toy blockchain that runs in your browser, and
What
rather
year was
than
this? Sorry, Rhea, what year was this when you made?
2015, I want to say.
I've got 2014 on
And
your website.
okay, then 2014. Then I won't lie on my website. So I've got the timeline slightly wrong. So I would have been interested in the technology before that, and then really, I'm going to have to check my diaries. So am I getting the years wrong? I'm sorry about this. My memory is like a particularly lovely tape loop with a very large and heavy magnet next to it,
But
and
was it
I'm not very
before?
good at remembering things.
Was it the first piece of art that you had made, like going back into your art career? Well, not into your art practice.
So I refer you to my previous comment about the memory tape. So there's the first couple of pieces were Proof of Existence and Facecoin, and I cannot remember the order of them now. I do apologise. Facecoin was my I want to understand how this technology works piece, and it uses.
Oh, when you say your first ones, you mean your first kind of crypto-related
Yes,
work?
yes,
Right.
yeah. I'd been,
Right.
I didn't like, I wasn't on strike at art school and the years after, but no, in terms of crypto related work, Facecoin, it's historically interesting because people were already upset about the power, the energy wastage of proof of work, even at that time, and so I thought, and people wanted to do like protein folding or SETI searching for alien signals or whatever as the proof of work. So it'd be doing something useful, like securing the network isn't useful. So I thought, well, going back to my, what's the definition of art? Well, art is useless. So rather than doing the useless work of creating a SHA-25 hash and looking for zeros in it, I thought, well, we can do the useless work of making art, and what's the simplest thing it can do in terms of having known lovely family members who've gone around galleries going, yeah, this is good. I can see a face in this. Yeah, it's definitely when looking at abstract art. It's like, well, let's make faces. Like, let's make little portraits. So it takes the same cryptographic hash that that Bitcoin would, but it uses a face recognition algorithm to look for little faces in it. So it was doing something still sort of functionally useless, but it was doing something aesthetically not useful, but whatever the aesthetic equivalent of useful is. And I used to leave that running on the projector in Decontrol. And proof of existence was people were very, very, very interested in the idea of cryptographic proof, which is obviously, a sum which gives the expected result, and that they just totally went into general ideas of proof with that in terms of like truth or factuality, and the gap between something being cryptographically signed and therefore authentic within that crypto system. And is it true that the sun rose this morning? That's a vast gap, and we can swim around in that and have floaty toys in there, have a really fun time. And so, yeah, proof of existence was me having learnt about change addresses, handcrafting a Bitcoin transaction which had the hash of my genome from 23andMe, which I now greatly regret having done for a previous startup, and did ask them to remove before they got sold to whoever they got sold to. But it was this sort of no, I exist because I was a bit unemployed and a bit running out of money, and the sort of need to feel that I did actually still exist was quite strong. So, sort of taking this idea of cryptographic proof, it's like, no, someone with my genome has definitely existed at least from this point in time, age 30, whatever, 40, whatever. And the bit that I've missed out quite unfairly is in 2014, Marguerite de Courcelles, a coin artist on Twitter, had been doing some wonderful, she called them alternate reality games. They'd now be regarded as crypto puzzle trails. And again, I saw the first ones like, oh, it's a painting of, various crypto culture figures. That's interesting as a subject for a painting. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh wow, and that led you on this amazing rabbit hole trail that led to a Minecraft world, which if you solved the puzzle there, won you some crypto. Oh, well. So like I said, hey, this is great to Marguerite, and sort of she basically became my spy master for the next few years, sort of suddenly arriving in my life going, hey, we're doing this project. Do you want to be involved? We're going to do some puzzles and things. So I'd sort of brainstorm with Marguerite on how to horrifically misuse cryptographic algorithms to create puzzles for people to solve inside of artworks. And the one that people remember, which again we made sort of certainly where I was at sort of rock bottom, was the Legend of Satoshi Nakamoto, or Torched Hearts, which was the one that we made when we said people are solving the puzzles too quickly. Like, we spend days making a puzzle, it looks beautiful, it's conceptually elegant, people crack it in a couple of hours. Like, we need something that's going to take them a couple of weeks. Like, what can we do to make it more complex? And so this became a painting with a little chessboard on, which everyone thought was a QR code. It wasn't a QR code. And a series of about 196 flames of different colours and heights and around the edges, which I met some of the people who had tried to crack the puzzle years later, and they've made
What's
these
it called? Sorry,
beautiful.
is it Googleable?
It's so if you search for Torched Hearts, or the Legend of Satoshi Nakamoto, if you search for the $40,000 Bitcoin painting, that will probably get you there. Vice had a nice write up The BBC also did, but they're refusing to remove my dead name. So anyway, yeah, I've met people who made these beautiful user interfaces to visualize the flames and everything, try and crack them. I handed Marguerite this like not old fashioned computer printout, but a text file saying flame up red outline yellow, and she painted these absolutely perfectly, and we know that she painted these absolutely perfectly because some years, not weeks later, someone finally cracked the code and claimed the prize. And by that point, and originally it had 2,000 USD of Bitcoin in it. And 2 years later, when it was, I think it was 2 years later when it was cracked, that was $40,000. And like by that point, we were quite paranoid. I'd moved all of the source material off of my laptop hard disk in case anyone tried to steal my laptop to get
My
clues for it.
God.
And yeah, when Marguerite contacted me and said, "Someone says they've cracked it. Do you think we've been hacked?" That was quite an occasion. But
I'm
again,
sorry.
that
Like,
sort of
how does this work? So I'm looking at the painting. How on
right.
earth can you
Bec-
possibly solve this, and what does it mean to
So
solve it?
I spent years just having to go blank whenever anyone asked me about it. So it's still a psychological pressure on me to say, you see around the edge of it, there are some lovely flames.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see there are different colours and different heights.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So there are bits, information theoretic, like zeros and ones. There are bits of information in the height, in the colour, in the outline colour, and that gives you a series of bits.
Mm-hmm.
We'd done lots of binary codes before, so like circles or squares or whatever. And so having, I think it's 6 bits per thing, and 6 bits was not an unusual value because the sort of the wallet word strings use 6 bits. So using 6 bits of information seemed like a Schelling point. It seemed like something people would be able to guess. And then just to make it a bit difficult, because this was so simple, it's just like a tiny little bit more complex than all the other puzzles. To make this a little bit more complex, you had to XOR it, which is, again, a perfectly standard logical operator for cryptography. Everyone knows XOR. Everyone would think of XOR. You have to XOR it with some bits in a key. Now, where on this picture do you think the key is?
Oh god. Um.
No, the keyword.
Well, there's an actual literal key.
There's an actual literal key. Now, lots of people thought it was the chessboard.
Right.
It wasn't the chessboard. It
It's
was
the
the
key.
actual literal key. And if you look at the actual literal key, it has some ribbons on it.
Yeah.
And the ribbons are different lengths. And
Yes.
because we weren't being cruel, the long ones are ones and the short ones are zeros. So you assemble the string of bits from the edge, and XOR it with the key from the key. And then at the start of it, there's a little message that says something like, yes, you found it, or there's some sort of, you can tell that you've done it. And then the rest of it is the private key for the Bitcoin transaction to claim the prize. And
A
I
lot of
think
red
it's one of
herrings
those.
in there.
Yeah, yeah. But this is the thing. It's we were so immersed in, and I can't speak for Marguerite here, but my memory of it is we were so immersed in it. We'd done so, and lots of other people had worked on these, and this is just my experience and my sort of part of the contribution to Marguerite's awesome stuff. We'd done so many of these puzzles. We'd sort of stuck to, here's a bit string that you do things with or whatever, and we'd thought we'll make it just a little bit more difficult. And it's I think there's an XKCD cartoon about this where it's two physicists going, oh yeah, we can't assume they'll know, advanced algorithm. We'll have to assume that they just know, term of art if you're a physicist. And I think we might have made the mistake of going, oh yeah, everyone, knows bit strings and logical operators and can relate them culturally to cryptographic wallets so yeah, what we thought would take a couple of weeks took a couple of years.
God,
So
Amazing.
that must have been so
yeah.
fun to make.
So it was for me.
Hmm.
Marguerite, as I say, had to paint, I think, 196 or possibly more perfectly distinguishable flames around the edge, and I still apologise to her when I see her about that.
That's really
But
nicely painted.
that as a sort of that from Marguerite's work and the sort of Doge culture that I lovingly present in my short story Bad Shibe. These are my sort of views
Mm,
into sort of culture as a way of, I don't want to say selling crypto because that's not what people are doing, but a way of understanding and making real crypto. It's like, oh, it's this
mm,
weird little program that sends some numbers around. How does that fit into society? And sort of, the Doge culture of excellence and gifting, the sort of virtue culture that they created in about 2 months when the code came out, and coin artists' puzzle trails, which sort of assembled the community around them, which were, learnt about the technology or learnt about the culture and about the art and came together to pursue them, were really powerful ways of doing that. And the thing that, before we stop me rambling on this topic, the thing that came out of all this was I'm a sort of good Euro lefty from the good Euro lefty art world. And to that social world, cryptocurrency was an evil right wing
mm,
libertarian technology that was basically here to bring about fascism. And like the intervening years haven't exactly been cruel to that viewpoint, but the refusal to engage with it and understand it has led to some very weak, very misguided critiques from the left
Sorry, the
in the
refusal to
intervening
understand what?
years.
Sorry.
The refusal to understand how cryptocurrency, how the blockchain works, and what it actually means to the people who use
Hmm.
it. And by how it works, I mean, why you have proof of work, how transactions work, how the anarcho-capitalist ideology of the cypherpunks maps onto why you have this technology where you cannot intervene at the completion of a transaction at the instantaneous moment of its approval by the system. You know how this all relates to, and it uses SHA-256 to create endless pointless strings of zeros. Like the refusal to look at that as anything other than the product of evil. Like, can't,
Do you mean from people like
just
the
sort of
Elizabeth
doesn't
Warrens?
doesn't give you doesn't give you. Oh, sorry, no. I mean, sort of far lefter. No, so sort of and any sort of academic, philosophical
mm.
or cultural studies or what have you
Do you feel,
critique.
Ria, being in it from the very beginning, where it was sort of more, or the very early days, where there was more the promise of what the culture
Yes.
could bring, to being in it now for a good number of years, do you feel like it's held up? Do you feel like it's held up to its promise? Because you
So
are very active. You're in Discord. You tweet regularly. Well, maybe not always about your
yes,
work, but I feel like you're very much you're in the
yes,
network.
yeah.
Do you?
So um, it's tricky. My cultural model for the encounter between blockchain and art originally was conceptual art and net art. It was conceptual art because you had this sort of intangible art form which was resistant to existing networks of circulation, which was very quickly commodified by those existing networks and can now command a very high price, to the sort of ideological disappointment but financial delight of the people who made it. And with NetArt, you had this successful attempt to get into the network first before it had been reduced to just the sort of streamlined paths that that capital wanted you to pursue. NetArt was more advanced than e-commerce throughout the 90s, and successfully fought e-commerce at one time or another, and that was very inspiring to me as a model. And so coming to the
How do you
blockchain,
mean it was more successful than e-commerce? How was net?
I mean that in terms of it had a set objective, which was to give people a disruptive, critical experience of using the network,
Yeah.
versus e-commerce, which wanted people to hand over their credit cards and have something shipped to them from a website. Like I'm reasonably certain that by any decent definition of like .com e-commerce, NetArt started first, or at the very least instantaneously alongside. And it's sort of, you couldn't just go to Amazon, ignoring the fact that Amazon didn't exist then. You couldn't just go to Amazon. You had this sort of more open network, and you had to work to find things on there, and sort of NetArt rewarded you for that search, with experiences that said, that there's more you can do with this. There are ways this operates that you might want to reflect on. And it was doing this at the same time as tens of millions of dollars were being burnt by pets.com to fail to send cat food to people in California. It's like, sort of NetArt, from my point of view, NetArt won round one of what is the network for, or what is the web for. And obviously it was on mailing lists and Moos and IRC chat and everything as well. But when we say the net now, we unfortunately mean the web. So that's that viewpoint. And blockchain has sort of followed my my belief that you'd have this initial flourishing of disruptive and spread out activity and forms within it, novel forms within it, which despite the whole point of it being to represent monetary value, that would be difficult for existing institutions to go, okay, yeah, we've got this, we'll stick it on the wall and everything's fine. So that all played out, and sort of then everyone tried to create large centralized systems for it, and they haven't completely enclosed it, which is amazing and wonderful, and people are still doing weird things with the technology. So like my initial sort of temporary autonomous zone model of it has stretched out far longer than I thought it would. It's like I originally I did like 2 or 3 years of blockchain related work. Then I started looking at big data again, and I was blindsided by the emergence of rare art, as it was at the time, and NFTs, because I thought, you know, the obvious way to do an art world, sort of from a net art point of view, is to have sort of smart contracts as the artworks, because they're the units, the creative units that we can do stuff with, and because I was coming at it from this sort of critical, money bad point of view, I'd completely missed that. No, this is a spectacular way of representing value that cannot otherwise be represented. And so the actually existing rare art world was an ultimately very pleasant surprise to me. It wasn't the blockchain art world I'd imagined a couple of years previously, but as I say to this day, I'm deeply relaxed about artists being able to make more of a living from their art. And sort of, rare art managed to do this, NFTs managed to do this.
And when you were at Dapper Labs, which they are the CryptoKitties, right?
Yes.
Company.
Yes.
Did that inform at all your practice in any way? Being kind of in the midst of that?
Yes. So I'm a former employee of Dapper Labs. Nothing I say is private information or reflects the opinions of Dapper Labs at the time.
Great disclaimer.
Or now, disclaimer. I've made art out of disclaimers, and you can see why.
Yeah.
Yes, it absolutely did. So I was very much poacher turned gamekeeper going there. I'd sort of accidentally, once again, become an expert in a obscure technology which suddenly was very employable. And I did have as much experience of programming Ethereum as it was possible to have. My first projects, the ones that people know, were written on the pre-release test net before Ethereum was even released. So I kind of knew the tech. And I'd also had people shouting at me on social media for years about how I was Satan for using this tech. And
I'm sorry, Rhea. What does that mean to have written your first things on the pre-release testnet?
Oh, sorry. So the Ethereum project started in the year Mumble, and whilst the project was going, well, we've established that I'm so bad at dates, so I don't want to screw this one up. So the software was being written whilst the token launch was being prepared and everything. So the software was available because open source, as people view it, means sort of you just dump your code onto GitHub and people can download it and run it. So everyone could download and run the software as it was being written. And because this is networked software, to test it, you need a network to test it against. But the token release is still like a year, 18 months out. So they just there are test nets now for Ethereum, and the whole idea of them is that they have a currency that has no value. They had to shut down one of the test nets years ago when people started selling the currency from it for actual value because it was quite scarce.
The only difference is the fact that one is official, the others aren't.
Yes, yeah, and there's differences about the security scheme and so on. It's like you wouldn't want to put your final, multi-million-dollar system on the test net because it's not as secured as mainnet. Because it's I'm completely mangling the arguments here for the present day. In the past, this was kind of true, but anyway. So that there was like a test net or a series of accidental ephemeral test nets prior to release, which you could deploy software onto, even if they were only on your own machine. And these were sort of wiped away.
These were shared by Vitalik
release.
on GitHub, or
well, no, you started up the software, and it's so yeah. The code, like the Ethereum node that you would run as the software as the client for the network was on GitHub, and the compiler for the programming language you used, which from memory was Serpent, which looks like Python, was on GitHub. So you download them, compile a lot of C++, run it, and it would then sort of go onto the internet and say, hello, is anyone else running this software? And eventually it would find someone else running the software and connect to it. And you'd sort of do the proof of work thing of extending the network, and then you could deploy your contracts to it and mine ETH. I, I was in ETH something an air when I was using the testnet, but of course it's not real. So that's just, all of this is just to say, like, I had sort of
So it wasn't actually ETH. It was like a precursor, like a ETH
it was,
v0.
so it was the software that was used when ETH went live. So it was the ETH software in development, because they published the white paper and they started working towards the token release, and they had, the software that would realize all of this, and it was just on GitHub because that's how people work or worked. And so you could grab it and use it, and because you were using it and it's designed to generate a network, it would generate an ephemeral network which you could then complain about bugs in, if there were any. I don't remember complaining about any. And so anyway, all of this is simply to say that I occasionally say I have X years of experience with Ethereum, and people say, but it wasn't released until a year after I claim, and I then have to do this big long explanation. But anyway, I had.
Did it feel world changing at the time? Did it feel
Yes,
massive?
yeah, yes, it really did. Like, I'd programmed software locally. I'd programmed software on like text and 3D virtual reality servers, and I'd programmed sort of server side software and that kind of thing, and it did just feel different. The fact that you had sort of programmable money, basically, wasn't something that I had encountered before, and sort of the examples that they gave of sort of, Namecoin in 5 lines of code and that kind of thing was fairly mind-blowing. So yeah, it was nothing compared to the network going live, but I can see what they're going for here. I see that this is going to work. I can see what we can do with this.
And did you
And
see
sort of
NFTs coming at
No,
that
no.
point?
So the contracts that I wrote, I was sort of modeling. I was modeling the art world up from artwork to like museum and catalogue raison and stuff. And at no point, and there are like saleable artworks in there, but they're at the level of the contract, because I thought contracts were the obvious unit of code.
What is that?
I
Can you? I'm sorry for
No
someone
worries.
like myself who's not technical. Can you explain what that actually means?
Totally. So when you write a program, it's a blob of code that you then sort of hand to an operating system, or a piece of hardware, or in the case of Ethereum, you send to the network for all of the machines on the network to copy and run. And there are different ways of referring to that blob of code. We can call it a program, we can call it a script, we can call it an app. And for historical reasons, and to the eternal non-delight of lawyers, Ethereum calls its blobs of code contracts. Now, this is because they were intended as smart contracts after the work of Nick Szabo. Once again, I apologize to everyone on the planet who has a name, who came up with the idea of smart contracts like in the 90s. And his example of a smart contract was, rather than going into a shop and speaking to the shop clerk and saying, here's some money, can I have a can of soft drinks, please? And they go and get you the can and they hand you the drink. And blah, 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 blah. You go to an automatic vending machine, you press the button, pop some money in, out pops the can of drink. A contract, a financial offer for sale, acceptance of that offer, fulfillment of that offer has been completed, but automatically without a human being intervening at that time. Lots of human beings obviously have made the machine, tested the machine, ensured that the machine does actually count as property, and you're not allowed to just break the machine open and take all of the cans. But so the contract is basically automatic, and he said, okay, we can do this with programs as well. Software can be this kind of inhuman offer and acceptance and completion of a contract. And so Ethereum took this and ran with it. They're like, okay, you can write smart contracts. And so that when you write the code in the sort of human readable language that you send to be turned into the numbers that get sent to the network, the thing that your code is bundled together in is called a contract. You say sort of contract, my contract, or the code, and then you refer to it as that. As any lawyer you show this to will immediately tell you, they're not actually contracts in a legal sense. Primavera de Filippi has this wonderful quote that I stole from her for the on NFTs books, which is smart contracts are like contracts in the same way that koala bears are like bears. It's like any visual resemblance is not a functional or genetic resemblance. So these things which originally were designed to sort of allow you to sort of have an offer and acceptance of some sort of monetary contract have been used, sure, to represent property in the form of NFTs, which are still, a form of property that you can enable for sale. But that the ERC 721 standard doesn't have that sort of handling of the money built in. So you have a contract that represents property, but that doesn't represent value. But sort of the idea of property is that it usually has value. So this idea of a contract has sort of drifted very, very, very far away from what you or I would sign our signatures onto as a legal contract. And
So you
I'm now
initially saw
so
Ethereum
yeah.
as an interesting playground where you could basically write programs as artworks on this kind of world
Yes, yeah,
computer.
yeah, and that, but that could be used as actually useful tools, because I was just sort of I wanted the art world to engage sort of critically and creatively with this technology, and to be blunt, to get money from it, because artists can always use more money. And I wanted the blockchain scene, the blockchain world, to view art not as this weird, effete, commie attempt to steal their toothbrushes, but as a useful playground for ideas where you can make an artwork that does something very complex on chain, and if it goes wrong, you're not going to get taken down by regulators for failing to provide people with their food or water via the blockchain. And I was screaming into the void about this for a long time. But no, and sort of the experience I had of working with the code like this, and then the experience over the next few years of people repeatedly refusing to understand how blockchains work and having to explain it to them, and then having to catch up with the NFT art world. The Furtherfield book, Artists Rethinking the Blockchain, which I have a couple of pieces in, and is still really wonderful. Like when it came out, I thought, oh yeah, this is great. There'll be lots of books like this in about 18 months. And it's like, nope, there's still very few books that engage that seriously with blockchains relationship
Why
to
was it so
art.
much more interesting
And
to you? Sorry,
so
why
no,
did you
go on, yeah.
why did you find it so much more interesting than just kind of being able to create a website and run a program on that?
It was the so with the benefit of hindsight, it's because it was a singular plastic medium for rules, value, and aesthetics. So a single blob of code could say, if you do this with this amount of money, this will result. And sure, you can get a PayPal account on a website and write something in PHP, but it was just the social coordination of it. It was the peer-to-peer social and economic open communication medium of it. And sort of, sure, if we go back 20, 30 years to the point where people did make their own websites, then yeah, there's that was the same experience. And I spent a long time trying to work out what the Ethereum equivalent of writing your own homepage in 10 minutes was. And from memory, I never really came up with an answer to that. But yeah, that singular plastic medium for value, rules, and representation apps was catnip to me. And sort of after my initial Ethereum experiments, I was then using Counterparty for a while, the token system, because it wasn't this sort of linear, hey, let's improve the complexity of things. It was, oh yeah, this is another interesting system that's come out. I'll use this as well. So once again, not a visionary, but also, it wasn't clear at that moment which approach would come through. And like I did write an art market contract, which I released, I think, 2 weeks after Kevin McCoy did Monograph. I was swearing greatly when watching that being released, but Kevin's a very dear friend, so he's been very supportive to the art and to me since then. So, I'm glad that someone who could cope with the the attention that a actually running system gets did that rather than me. But yeah, it wasn't clear, what the winning approach would be, and I certainly didn't think, oh yeah, I will use the token example from the Ethereum website to do this. I will use the actually running code of Counterparty or Doge Party, because once again, not a visionary. And so this experience of using the technology, having to defend the technology, have to creatively think about the technology, meant that I don't have a computer science degree. I do have 20 years of experience in industry, so that counts for something. But like Dapper were in Vancouver, I was in Vancouver when Artists Rethinking the Blockchain was released. That was the week that the CryptoKitties broke the Ethereum network by being so successful that all the transactions on it were CryptoKitties transactions. And so 2 days before I was due to launch Artists Rethinking the Blockchain at Decontrol, I got a message saying, oh, there's a local developer team who want to give a talk as well. Do you mind? I was like, yeah, sure, the more the merrier. And so that's how I got to go on stage after the CryptoKitties team had said, hi, we're CryptoKitties, we broke the Ethereum blockchain, and the room was completely packed for them. And the nightmare experience of, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? So if you're like the headline act and everyone's there to see like the local act that's opening for you, and they will leave, so there's just a few people left at the front watching you. Yeah, that was my experience.
Headline first is harsh.
of giving a talk about artists rethinking the blockchain after the CryptoKitties team. Again, they were lovely. They have some of the people who stayed to watch my talk, and I kept in touch with them. And yeah, working for Dapper was amazing. It informed what I do.
Sorry, so you joined their team after meeting
a few years later. It wasn't
right.
it wasn't a pity hire. So I joined them a few years later, and I worked on the Cadence programming language that they wrote, which is wonderful. I was there to sort of come up with idioms for using it and sort of explain to people how you use it, which you can see from the background I had was perfect. And also I worked on securing making sure that contracts were secure. I sort of, I was definitely the person who had read the most cadence code of anyone in the world at one point briefly, and the sort of the responsibility of reading through code that you know is going to be load bearing for millions or tens of millions, or in a couple of cases hundreds of millions of dollars worth of value. It focuses your attention.
No pressure.
Now, for anyone watching this who's holding any rubber hose, I have no keys, no access, no code from Dapper. Please do not kidnap me. I will not be able to get you anywhere near them. But that experience of seeing other people's code, thinking, this is what they're trying to do. This is how we think people should do things. These are the implications in terms of how much it will cost to run the code on the network, because you pay for running the code on a blockchain network. This is how it would affect security. Here's how it would affect things in terms of adoption culturally, in terms of people understanding it. That was amazing. That was. I described it as my making the Macintosh experience. That ability to be early on a truly groundbreaking project, and getting to sort of shape its development. Like, I never thought I would get to do anything like that, and to get to do it for a couple of years was absolutely amazing. And yeah, the experience of sort of really experiencing the pressures of the design pressures of making that stuff work, and experiencing the trade-offs of it was sort of, it underlined that I had understood, sort of, it sounds arrogant, but it underlined that I had understood things well, and it then helped me understand things more completely.
Were you on the side still making, like, how were you approaching your artwork? Are you just constantly writing? I imagine you
So
keep
I didn't
writing on
make
the side.
if you look at the dates on the website, there are various periods where I didn't make very much art.
Yeah.
I sat out 2021 because I was waiting for proof of stake, which I now bitterly regret, because nobody, like, I didn't get any good girl points for not
Did you
destroying the environment. And lots of people sold work quite well during that time, so yay ethics. And yeah, I sort of, when I have an employer, I do feel honor bound, sort of ignoring anything on any pieces of paper. I do feel honor bound not to cause trouble for them, so I was a bit quieter on social media. It wouldn't have been possible for me to make art using the Flow blockchain at that time. And I didn't feel it would have been honourable to go, and therefore I'm going to do stuff on Ethereum, which this is, a better replacement for. So I don't remember if I did do anything during that time, but I certainly did less during that time. But yeah, things kept moving on, and you see sort of waves of crypto culture in the art, particularly once I hit the NFT era. It's like proof of existence was very much about this sort of over-egging of the idea of crypto proof of cryptographic certainty. Facecoin was about energy slash purpose wastage in proof of work. The early NFT ones, tokens equals text, was sort of my, oh, you've done something better than I did. Okay, I will do something better than you, because it's ERC 998 rather than 721. And again, it's the era where people were starting to work out that it was difficult to uniquely own something when that notion of ownership is within one contract, within one system, within an enormous world. And so tokens equals text is about that problem of authenticity and ownership. And certificate of inauthenticity is also about, how do I know that this copy of the Mona Lisa I have bought is the actual Mona Lisa? It's like, well, you probably don't, and you probably can't using the systems we have. So let's go in the other direction and give you a certificate that says you absolutely do not have an authentic Rhea Myers artwork here. It's just something that you've done yourself. I've had nothing to do with it. And then museums always want me to tell them how to install it properly. And I'm like, are you trying to entrap me? Do you have your lawyers on the call ready to say, aha, but the contract says that you've had nothing to do with it? But no, they're always lovely. So like this immersion in crypto culture sort of did allow me to make work which touched on wider concerns, but which was both literate and unusual to sort of both art world and crypto world on the basis of that understanding. And like, not to skip too much work, but when we get to the current era with things like the fractionalized phallus, which
I was just going to
is what
ask
its name
about that.
implies.
Yeah.
So by how do I explain this in a PG way? So I had fuck it. So I had gender reassignment surgery a few years ago. Before that happened, I took a scan of the part of my body that was recycled for that. The scan was just hanging around for years whilst I sort of got over having to look at it. And sort of my wife wanted me to make a 3D print of it and do a project called Go Fuck Yourself, but that's not going to happen. And she didn't mean it like that, but you know. So eventually I thought, oh, I know. I will slice it into like salami sections and make little coins of it, which will, like, you know, tokenize the master signifier of masculinity. And this was
masculinity. Great,
yeah,
Tom.
it's Jacques Lacan, the
What a
French
great term. Sorry.
the French philosopher and fraud, who is beloved of many people who.
What does he call the female? Well, that's one for another discussion.
Yes, yeah, we won't go into that just at this point. So anyway, and around the time I sort of worked out what I could do with it, this was the end of 2024 when Donald Trump was like, no, I am entitled to be president again. And American corporate culture very quickly worked out that, no, this was going to happen. I was like, we need to make everything more manly. Everything needs to be more manly. And like seeing transcendental soy cuck Mark Zuckerberg sort of say, yes, Facebook needs a more masculine culture. It's like, okay, how are you gonna do that, my dude? Like, you know, sort of, knock yourself out. And the answer to that was, oh, of course, this sort of tokenized signifier of masculinity is something that, you know, individuals or corporations could buy in to become manlier. Because, like, you know, what is manlier than the phallus? And like, for those of you who can't read human expressions and don't really follow my rather monotone voice, this is all at a very high level of irony. But anyway, so I was sort of writing the code to sort of load in the 3D scan, and sorry, it's not that big, obviously. It's like loading the 3D scan. So to load in the 3D scan and slice it up, and the first one I did, it sort of followed not top to bottom, but sort of the way that the algorithm that had glued together the point cloud from the scan had gone. So it sort of swept from left to right. And so you got these really weird shapes that started out as like shark jaw bite shapes and then became these big weird rings and then became a couple of teardrops opposite each other. And I was like, oh yeah, that's really good. I'm not going to debug this. Like, I'm going to take sort of the trans feminine association with glitch and put that in here as well. So yeah, these are sort of tokens that are tokens of masculinity that you can buy in order to increase the masculinity of yourself or the or the corporation that you work for in an era where everything has to be manlier. And sort of the reason it's sort of the blockchain stuff there, it's like there's nothing interesting in the smart contract on the code level, but the idea of fractionalization continues to be popular in the blockchain world. And a few months after this, one blockchain company did a very disastrous, oh, thank God, woke is over promotional video on Twitter, which they were dragged to hell and back for and very quickly took down. But
Was that this
sort of,
Solana ad?
eh?
Was that this
Sorry?
Solana ad?
Probably.
Mm.
Yeah, it was. Uh, if I describe it as misjudged, bear in mind I'm being polite. Anyway, so this was the environment this was made in, but sort of having these blockchain
So did
ideas
you
of tokenization and fractionalization to hand meant I could do something very quickly about it in this way, and sort of be open to what came in through the process of making it. Yeah, sorry, Layla. What were you gonna...
I actually, so did you release it, Rhea?
Yes. So I had a show in Berlin at
With Nagel
the
Draxler,
lovely
that's right.
Nagel
Yes,
Draxler.
sorry.
Tokens
Yeah,
available. Please ask Nagel Draxler to buy
brilliant.
one. They're
Yeah.
lovely. And so the new works in that show, because they're good for sort of illustrating the process, were the fractionalized phallus, non, which
Which I also
is
love.
a non-disparagement, non-disclosure, non-compete contract, which isn't an NFT, but which, if you agree to it, you somehow own the NFT. And it's very much the sort of process. All three projects ended up being about subjectivity. It's like I made them over the end of 24, started 25. So they all ended up being about subjectivity. So the fractionalized phallus is about the subject within patriarchy. Non is about the subject within techno capital, within venture capital startup land, and it puts the owner or the viewer, who is presumably an empowered subject within that system, in the same position as an employee within it, but creates a free subject by doing so. And the other one is, oh God, what's the last one?
I mean, we're going to have to post the pictures of the exhibition. Nagel Draxler are exquisite. I want to ask you actually about your experience as well working. It's such a great gallery.
They are really, 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 really good. Yes. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember my own art because I woke up early this morning. I'm sorry. What's the other project? No, that's the blog.
Free?
Self-identifying. Was the other one. So self-identifying is it's some PostScript programs which they're generative art, so they make an image. They're Quine, which is a program which prints its own source code, and ultimately they are a cypherpunk political subject because they are something that creates and controls and signs its output with its own cryptographic keys, which just so happen to be made from the hash from the unique identifier for their source code. So they're a cypherpunk subject, is how that relates. And the reason it's PostScript is when I was at art school, I learnt PostScript, which was the programming language that everything that was printed was rendered in at some time or another at that time. And it looks a bit like Bitcoin script, a bit like the programming language that Bitcoin uses. If you do programming languages, they are both basically fourths. They're stack-based prefix languages. If you don't, take it from me, they share a vague ancestry. And so I dusted off the PostScript viruses I'd written in the early 90s for a show at Gazelli in the UK, and people really liked this and were paying me to glitch up their project logos or white papers using the PostScript virus. And this resemblance between PostScript and Bitcoin script, which I'd mentioned to people in the past, was driven home to me by this. And so behind self-identifying, there's this sort of, what if you explained Bitcoin badly to a Martian? And they said, well, like this, like, they said it was a stack-based language that does cryptography. And so it's like, no, that okay, yeah, it is all of those things, but it's not the things in the right way. Like I clearly did not quite. Let's try again, and from that it just cascaded through, sort of to making something that could express itself in a way that anyone who has a decent definition of self or expression would be very upset by, but that I thought was really fun.
I wonder if it's time to speak about your work yes, Jamie.
I'm really sorry. We definitely obviously need to get into quality sphere, but just really curious, Rhea, like you've been coming from a art school background to being as deep in the crypto world as you are. How do you think about how you would like to be perceived by the world as an artist? I guess it's a kind of like art world, crypto art world question. Do the Ethereum people, are they excited by the work that you're doing? Are you Noggle Draxler or an art world gallery? But do you feel that
they're lovely?
Are they able to effectively communicate what your work is really about to a wider audience?
Yeah. So the first few years where I was doing this kind of work, it was a straight split between public galleries in the UK that sort of had and Europe that had like a mission to sort of show new art to people, and crypto conferences which needed some cultural cachet, and so they'd have like some monitors with crypto art on, and some very good shows did actually come out of that, because they asked the right people. I'm still extraordinarily bad at networking, so I don't sort of really know any high-placed crypto people. I'm sure any high-placed crypto people I do know who hear this are horribly offended by me saying that. If you are a high-placed crypto person, I know you. I'm sorry. I think you're brilliant, and I'm not trying to challenge your position. I'm just sort of see earlier comment about social skills. In the art world, I came from the art world. NFTs came from the art world originally, and from sort of internet culture.
NFTs came from the art world.
Yeah, so Monograph and Quantum were made by Kevin McCoy, who's a New York-based artist. The ancient Ascribe system, which people don't remember now, one of the people working on that was an art historian. I'm an artist. I did the early Ethereum proof of concept stuff for smart contracts for all different sorts of things. And sort of the culture that sort of informed Crypto Puzzle Trails came from Marguerite de Courcelles, who's an artist, and the sort of the rare art wave that sort of predates and swept through the early NFT era came from sort of, how do I phrase this, sort of 4chan Pepe fandom, which was sort of a cultural thing rather than a technological thing. So it wasn't this sort of imposture by the mythical crypto bros upon innocent artists. It was art world actors with genuine historical problems to solve, who sort of took the opportunity, took the affordances that this new technology presented. So, how would I like to be remembered or perceived? if anyone's mad at me, I wouldn't like to be perceived at all. Please don't perceive me. Please perceive someone else. I don't like. I always said I would like a footnote in art history, please, because I'm very much a remix artist. I'm someone who takes what others have done and extracts surplus value from it creatively, and I'm very proud of what I do. But yeah, I'd like that footnote, please. And sort of, I'm glad that we're beyond the eras of computer art and technology. I'm glad that I can just be seen as an artist in this era. And having been an early / historic NFT artist for a few years, now just being seen as an artist who's making new work which people are interested in for reasons other than the date of its production is very reassuring to me. So yeah, sort of.
Did you
some sort of artist who fucks around with technology? I do. Sorry, just the last thing is I often joke that there's this wonderful essay by Richard Barbrook and the late Andy Cameron called The Californian Ideology. The name's a reference to Karl Marx's The German Ideology. And it's a very fair, informed critique of the gap between Silicon Valley's sort of aesthetic of sharing and its ethic of rent extraction. And I often joke that I've taken that as a manifesto rather than a critique. So if anyone can not remember me for that, that would be great. I'd like something more positive than that. Yeah.
Jamie already asked this, but going back to like Nagel Draxler, which is a proper gallery, and has a very much of an it is though. It's been around for years. It's not hasn't just popped up. They have multiple locations. They have a very much of an art world audience, I think. Sorry, I mean, when I say, I mean that more, that they have more of a traditional art world audience. How much of your work do people understand? Like it is.
So Nagel Draxler have been absolutely wonderful. Their curators understand my work probably better than I do. And if anyone sort of doesn't understand exactly what a SHA-256 hash is, they appreciate the work and appreciate what I'm doing. So they've been absolutely brilliant, and I'm fantastically grateful to them because the work was always intended for an art world context. And like I have and do play a character on social media who's like, burn down the galleries, tokenize the ashes, and it's like that's fine, but my model of what would happen was always there will be this flourishing and then there will be a recuperation. And I always wanted the work to be in galleries, and that the work that has been shown in Nagel Draxler that was made newly for the shows was absolutely very carefully designed to look good in a gallery and in people's wallets and on the wall. But, it was like, you are being very kind to me and giving me this opportunity. I don't want to fuck you over by giving you something that looks terrible in these wonderful spaces you're giving me this opportunity in. So, and because I come from that art world background, because the work has always been intended to work in that context, I didn't have to change anything. Indeed, it sort of allowed me to go further in terms of, no, I will make this absolutely so that it can be printed. That's great. And the thing that I joke about Nagel Draxler with is I kept on asking curators to put the work on walls as vinyl cutout letters. And I sort of like you get in windows in shops, just sort of sale now on, or in galleries where it's conceptual art. And Nagel Drax were the first ones to do it, and it looked so good. And I was like, yeah, I knew this would work. And absolutely no disrespect to other lovely and brilliant curators with lower budgets than or less time to focus on me for a presentation of a single work. But yeah, it looked so good, and working.
It looks so exquisite.
Thank you. Yeah, working with a traditional gallery who are enthusiastic for the work and spent a hell of a lot of time and effort on understanding the work and showing it in its best light is absolutely wonderful. As I say, this is not to disrespect any of the other wonderful galleries and curators I've worked with. It's just I got to be the main character with this a bit more, and so the work has sort of been shown very well.
Have they had much luck? Have they had much luck turning critics, collectors, other art world people, galleries onto your work?
I had a conversation with them about this, and I'm not giving anything away here. It's like, because my objective with sort of working with them was, okay, so I can bring you some crypto world people, and you can bring me some art world people, and it's like I felt like they've sold, like sales have been good, but I felt that they, you always feel that they could be better. And I spoke to them and said, look, I'm sorry if I haven't lived up to my end of the bargain. And they're like, no, we're really happy with what's gone on. That was very reassuring to me, because it was the last worry that I had about working with them, was the risk they were taking and whether it was a sufficient reward to them. But no, I'm fantastically happy with having worked with them, and I didn't have the serious, we must replace the corrupt art world institutions with shiny blockchain code that some people did. So like this wasn't any kind of political pivot for me. I always wanted the work to be in galleries and museums. So yeah, but no, Nagel Drax were brilliant. The first show was in Crypto Kiosk. The second one was in the main gallery, which gave us even more space to set things up in. So that was brilliant.
But your work is just really fits into their program too. Sometimes you see traditional galleries bringing in artists from, maybe more from our space because they are looking to expand collectors. But your work just fits so well into Nagel Draxler or like Listen Gallery. Like it's like, art galleries that have been really interested in conceptual art for a very long time. And yours is a continuation of,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been
theorist.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fantastically lucky in the support that I've had. Like Furtherfield showed some of the early work in some of their shows as part of their mission. Kate Vass took a chance on the work and showed some of the early blockchain aesthetics pieces, which I'm fantastically grateful for. That was my first commercial gallery showing. Gazzelli has sort of shown the pre-blockchain work, which is great. And yeah, Nagel Draxler have sort of really built on the single artist shows. And yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of that particular curatorial process. And yeah, they do have that sort of knowledge of the past, eye to the future thing going on there. They're really good.
I imagine it is tricky with your work, because like maybe more so than any artist I've ever met, your work, like the amount of context you need to know for it to click.
It is tricky. Like the work is meant to be immediately accessible in terms of you can see it. And there's often this moment of, okay, I can see it, is that it? To which the answer is, of course, no. And then there's the whole, it's like this experience of this particular view of the world. Sort of very, very early on, I encountered things like there's that book, The Painted Word, where it's someone complaining that you have to know lots of theory to look at modern art. And my response to that was, if you look at like a crucifixion or an adoration of the Magi, then you have to know like the whole of a religion's iconography to understand what's going on in this picture of someone having a really bad or really good day. So all art which has any kind of depictive or communicative function is knowledge laden, is knowledge infused. But that the minutiae of crypto culture and conceptual art aren't taught with the same enthusiasm as the Bible and Shakespeare. So, yeah, it does. I can squirm a bit, but I can't get away from that charge. And the only thing I can say is that when I write about the work, I do say what's in it, and if it doesn't interest people as much as the aesthetics do, that's perfectly fine. Lots of have an experience from the work. That's great. So it's therefore, if you need something to meditate on further, then it's there. It's there. But like,
Rhea,
there's no deliberate aesthetic incompetence in it. Even if I do have these sort of bromides, I keep coming back to because I like them. Yeah. Sorry, Layla, what were you saying?
well, before we move into Qualinosphere, which we definitely need to get into, but
Yes.
because how did you? I just also want to ask you, like, none of your works are deeply personal, whereas Fractionalized Palace is.
Oh,
How do you, or do you feel like you're sort of removed from that? Because
I mean, I feel it was removed from me, but the pause for laughter. But the so it's tricky because like when I was at art school, I'm here all week, folks. Sorry. So when I was at art school, I was making sort of work that looks pretty much like I do now. It was sort of very graphically designed, often typography stuff, and I gave a presentation of the work where I was talking about the feelings of like desperation to belong and feelings of incredible alienation that went into the work, and people were like, I didn't realize, like, and I can see it now, but I didn't realize. And with the work, the ones that are not simply me doing the artist trickster role are very, very much, or historically were very, very, very much about those feelings, and the work from the Nigel Draxler show. So I mentioned that they're all about different models of personhood or the subject, different subjectivities in an era where governments are competing to eliminate my personhood, and like that's desperate stuff. There is a degree of fear and desire to be remembered and desperation to those works, and there's still competent politics and theory and tech that goes into them, but they don't sort of that, as I used to put it very, very cynically, they're not crying onto the canvas, sure, but that they are sort of that their works with emotional content, if that's what one wishes to recover from works. And I do sort of mediate my emotions and my ability to cope with things by making art. Like, there's a definite pivot, sort of pre and post transition from sort of, I want to understand the world, but lacking a fairly vital piece of information about my piece within it. And by the time we get to like the early NFT works, it's my subconscious screaming at me like, why are you so interested in secret and hidden things that aren't available to the viewer. And so the work since then, like, I don't think it's fully integrated that that shift, but has a much more modest position regarding my ability to understand things. Like before, I was always, I don't have the time to understand things, so here's what I understand now. Whereas now it's like, it's possible to believe one has a complete view of the world, but for something inside you or behind you to be unrevealed to you, and therefore, what do we even know? So, the ones about subjects are my attempts to sort of go, well, okay, but possibly I'm a person, maybe I'm a person. There are these different kinds of models of persons. So, like, let's make pictures of these sort of pictures and expand the sense of these kinds of peoples and attempt to sort of claw my way back to any kind of confidence in my own, in my own existence as a person. So, yeah.
Should we get to Kuala Noosphere? Let's do it.
So what date is this? Is it going to be 2026, or it's going to be 2026, isn't it? So I'm going to say 2025 because I was working on this in 2025, and it's going to say 2026 on the website, and I'm just going to get the dates wrong again. Yes. So Kuala Noosphere is the drop that we are doing together, and I'm fantastically excited for. It's I make the projects that won't leave me alone. I sort of get an idea for something and I sort of get out of its way. I've learned to not say, oh, but what about, or what if we, I just go, nope, here's the idea, it wants to be made, I'm going to do this. And Kuala Lumpur had a longer gestation period than most. It's been in the works for a while, and sort of the opportunity to have this release, have this drop, sort of gave me a much needed excuse to sort of stop worrying about whether I should do it one way or the other and go, well, I've got to do it now. Here's what I think of it now. So here's what we're doing. And it's a series of images of the little placards that you get in museums and galleries next to the artwork. And the reason I made these is I've long known that people who respond to museum questionnaires or who are studied in museums are shown to have spent much longer looking at the placards next to the artworks than they do at the artwork. So me going into artist trickster mode, it's like, oh, well, art is the thing that you look at. I'm an artist, therefore I will make the thing that you look at. And so that's why they are.
Is the stat that it's people who is that of people who do look at the placards, or like a mean across every visitor?
I would have to check. I believe it's the mean. I think that sort of people in general spend more time looking at the placards than they do at the art, which is great for all our curator friends, less so for our artist friends. But unlike this is,
it is really hard though, because I'm guilty of it.
I never read them.
You never read them, so I go.
But how do you know what to think about the art then?
Exactly.
do you just look at it and feel?
Somebody needs to tell me what I need to think. No, that's not why I do it. I think, I think it definitely has a lot to do with education. Meaning I don't come from an art historical background. Like I had a quite unorthodox route into becoming a curator. And I think because I always felt like I had to sort of self-educate myself about what I'm looking at, it became a habit that when I go to a gallery, I sort of needed to know at least like what dates are these work produced. I mean, I don't sit there reading attentively. That's unfortunately not my style, but I definitely will stand there and try to take in some key points to give myself some context. It's terribly bad. And I've definitely untrained myself from it because I've done it for many, many years. I have in my phone is
Why
ridiculous.
Why have you untrained yourself?
Because I think I'm trying to just look at the art now and then let myself think what I think it is. And then I do read it though. I do kind of then check, did I get this right? Is it the artist that I think it is? Is it made? I even like regions are interesting to me,
Do
like
I feel as I'm
geographically.
supposed to feel?
It's
So
not so much.
it's
I
not
mean,
that.
art is less about feeling for me. It's like
Mm.
sometimes like people say that like emotion it gives you, but actually art makes me. It's more about like, does it make me tick and like, does it stimulate my? Does it awaken any parts of my many dormant parts of my brain? It's more that, but yeah, but that's why I love your project so much, because as I
Thank
was
you.
thinking about it, I realized, sorry, just to say this, Rhea, my phone is full of photos of captions because it's so bad. Because I want to
I'd love to be
remember what
able
I
to say
looked
that
at.
mine. Yeah, I'd love to be able to say that mine isn't. But
Do you have as well?
when I'm seeing new art and I want to remember who
Same
the
here.
awesome artist behind the new art is, I will photograph them.
Exactly.
So that's why the medium, but the content of them is descriptions of artworks that don't exist in terms of other artworks that don't exist. So you'll have one that says, this is redder than number 73 in the series. Number 73 might not even be in the token drop. It may not exist at all. Number 73 will say it's bluer and rounder than number 111, and so on and so on and so on. And it's just this sort of shell game or run around of very, very confident pronouncements, and the fact that it's phrased as one of these placards is designed to sort of exploit the authority of that museum / curatorial institutional voice to sort of say, no, this is a definitive, informed statement about this work that you cannot see and does not exist. But it ends up being purely relative. It's purely described in terms of other non-existent, possibly non-existent artworks in the series, and this goes back to certificate of inauthenticity. This goes back to tokens equals text in terms of that question of, what do you own? What can you own? Like tokenization promises this expanded sphere of ownership, but that very quickly bounces off of the reality of what you can and cannot have certainty about. And here, once again, we're going for sort of complete uncertainty, but with all the paraphernalia, with all the drag of absolute institutional certainty. And why do you want to own this as an NFT in current era? Again, NFTs give you that sort of certain ownership of something intangible. We could do these as prints. We could do these on a floppy disk, as I did for self-identifying. But doing them as an NFT just sort of calls out to that sort of certainty of cryptographic property, that the content of the artwork simply doesn't fulfill, but that doesn't fulfill in a way that, if you let it, does give you that experience of the being swept away or activating part of your brain, the experience of aesthetic relations, of composition that artworks give you. So in a way, it is allowing you to own this unownable thing, but not to know what it's very easy to explain until I start trying to explain it in detail, when it runs away with the project itself, and I just have to start gesturing towards the philosopher Gilles Deleuze, of Deleuze and Guattari, if we're going to anglicise it, fame, and sort of his early work about difference between things and repeating things. And so this is a work that consists entirely of differences between things that you don't actually have access to in the first place, and yet nonetheless still exists. And the name,
and actually, sorry, and to add to that, differences are the only thing that give meaning. Like if there's no difference, you can't give meaning. There has to be the other in order to give meaning. And I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah,
that
it's
that
like
the
in
meaning,
a cartoon.
Sorry, that this meaning is part
like
of a network.
No, you're absolutely right. Meaning is part of a network. They're sort of, this is all very structuralist, but yes, there is only meaning in a network. It's like the bit in a cartoon where they walk into a perfectly white void and there's nothing there. They aren't anywhere. They can walk as long as they like without getting anywhere. You know, you don't know how much time has passed, what time of day it is. So yeah, you do need relations between things for meaning, absolutely. And sort of, again, here it has the structure of meaning, but possibly not the content of meaning. And the name was originally a code name. So projects often have code names because they end up having long names which get reduced to their initials usually, and I've been disturbed by other people starting to use the initials and talking about TET for token equals text. But Koala Noosphere was the code name. It stuck. A koala is a lovely little creature with a perfectly smooth brain. And a smooth brain is an internet insult
brain.
For a smooth brain.
Does that mean you're not smart?
It means you're not smart. And the noosphere.
Well, I think it means you're not a complex thinker, actually.
Yes, you're not a complex thinker. Thank you. Yes, and a noosphere, and now I can't pronounce it. The noosphere is the realm of thought, the realm of ideas. In the era where people were trying to name the experience of the internet, you had cyberspace because of William Gibson, you had the information superhighway, and you had the noosphere because it was this realm of pure thought and no trolling or commerce or anything. And so a koala noosphere would be this perfectly smooth space of ideas. And the smooth space is the Deleuze and Guattari thing of the blank background where you can't tell where anything is. Like if there's a group of you there, you know where you are relative to each other, but you don't know where in the world you are. So it's a silly and pretentious combination of concepts, which I didn't come up with a better name than, and so it's stuck, and so I have to defend it.
I like it.
And yeah, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I'm so happy that we're getting to do this together, to work together again, and to get this out into the world. I think people are going to have fun with this. Oh, I do sound like an NFT artist now. I think people are going to have fun with this. I think it's going to look good in their wallets or in their smart frames on their wall. And it's also, it is a sort of reflective, critical, artistic experience about.
Are we going white placards or slightly grey?
So as usual, I forgot to put a background on the image, so it's whatever colour they show in front of.
Oh, cool.
This happened. So this happened with tokens equals text. So I built all the assets and sent them out, and then a couple of years later, some very nice young people in New York were like, "Can we show tokens equals text?" I was like, "Sure, go for it. Here are the assets." And they had the text on like a purple background or something on the screen, and I was like, "I forgot to put a white background on this." If I had thought to, I don't think I would, because I just love what this allows you to do with it. So it should have a white background, but it doesn't. So if you want to put it on a nice grey, like the test renders, which people have seen, then you can. But no, they're designed to be sort of printed out small, stuck on the wall on a bit of foam card, and looked at without a picture next to them, and the typography is as good as I could code into a tiny Ethereum smart contract. So to all of my typography friends, I apologize. I know. I'm sorry. But it looks good, and it looks like the thing that it is meant to evoke, the thing that it is meant to look like.
Did you have any images in your mind of the artworks being described?
No, I sort of I have a long running unrealized project called Dumb Abstracts, which is sort of spoiled by the existence of zombie formalism as an idea. So like I do try to avoid zombie formalism, even though I do like pretty pictures. So no, I don't have an idea of what these would look like. The descriptions come from a series of projects I've been doing for a few decades now, which are good old fashioned buzzword generator style text generators. This is pre LLM AI, or it's generative art before generative AI, and they're sort of lists of words and little bits of code that glue them together in statements. And it started out with a project called the Cybernetic Artwork Nobody Wrote. Because I thought, well, someone should have written something like this in the 1970s in Fortran. But as I searched, I couldn't find it, so I thought I'd write it myself. But that experience of like, how do I break down these aesthetic properties and what do I do? That's been an ongoing interest of mine, and the current state of play went into this project and has reinvigorated my interest in this. So we'll see what comes next. But no, I was very careful not to visualize them. I think if I did, they'd probably be sort of very sort of second or third revival of abstract expressionist, but I do sometimes manage to keep up my own mental operational security and not think of an elephant. So I've done quite well with that this time. Yes, yeah.
Just trying to find one example, but I've lost the file.
Do you have the Git repo or the shared drive? Layla, sorry, you had an answer, but you had a question even on there, but you're on mute.
No, all good. I was just saying, I've been so looking forward to releasing this because I agree with you. I think it makes so much sense that they exist as NFTs, as this. You just will, because that's kind of how I feel about my works and my wallet. It's like, it's just like at the end of the day, I'm owning an idea, and it's the narration around the work that has formed what it is. And the image that I'm seeing is just a small part of it, but really what matters is the time that I bought or collected and how I felt the time I bought and collected, or how I feel about the artist. Yeah. So I really love this idea that it just feels like the medium. And I think that's something that you are so good at. You are so good at making everything about the blockchain, whether you're embedding it into the smart contract or whether it's just a critique on it or whether you're making a cultural reference to it. And I just really appreciate that about your work. And I cannot think of any other artist who does it to this extent. So you are definitely getting more than a footnote in Artist Circle books. I'm sure of that.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'd be over the moon as a parenthetical, so that's great.
We need to put you in touch with Hans-Ulrich Obrist. Have you had conversations with him?
I have. He's been lovely. I've had one conversation with him.
Great.
He's absolutely brilliant and very lovely, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have had the conversation with him. It was really good.
I feel like
there are other artists doing wonderful things.
Yes, of course.
With the stuff, but I am very happy to know them and to sort of have talked with them about this stuff, and like sort of art has been the one constant through my adult life, and getting to do it and getting even the few people who have come up to me at events and openings and saying, like, when they're students who are saying, "Oh, like, you're a big influence on my work," I'm like, yeah, I'm a rock star. This is amazing. It's like I must be very responsible, but like, no, it's absolutely wonderful when anyone enjoys the work, and to have so many people enjoy it is beyond my wildest dreams. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, and you're right. There are some great artists, but I see you as one of the very early ones, and very proud that we get to present it at Solos.
Thank you. Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question? Yeah. Sorry, Layla. I promise it'll be quite quick.
No.
It seems, Rhea, you are of the mindset that it's better to mint in the moment rather than hold works back unsold, unminted.
So like that was for this project. I do have a bunker containing various works of mine that I'm hoping to get into institutional collections, but yeah, I prefer to sell them at the time. Yes, yeah.
But just in general, your wallet, you've got a lot of your own work in your wallet.
Yes.
Is the thinking it's better to hold on to it and wait for the market to realize its value rather than
So yeah, no. That's an extremely good question. So I've treated the NFT works the same way I would have if they were prints or paintings or other physical objects. And so, both in terms of edition size historically, and in terms of pricing, and in terms of how I've approached selling them, I've treated them as like inventory in the studio. Now, that may have been a mistake in terms of wanting to get it into more people's hands, or of wanting to sort of, frankly, often to be able to move on to the next project. It's what I decided early on. I've been in this weird space now between one of ones and 10Ks, where it's like, eight to 30 pieces. It's like that makes perfect sense for a print edition, but for an original print edition, but for NFTs, it's like, so it's not a one of one, and it's not. But what are you doing? So doing like 10,000 of 10K drop, or 300 plus of Koala Noosphere is trying to align with the actual the economics of the medium for once, rather than going, nope, I'm going to keep doing what I do regardless of what happens. It's like, no, these are actually NFTs in the actually existing NFT art world. Let's treat them as NFTs and give people the experience of collecting NFTs, because there's only so much I can do to try and pretend these are actually sort of paintings in enormous wooden boxes being sent out by a shipping company to someone. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it is something I've been doing a lot of thinking about, and we did talk about it a lot whilst working on this drop. So yeah, my thinking has progressed a bit.
Have you considered just generally listing works that you do own? I mean, I've looked at your work in the past and thought, I wish there was something available.
I've been trying to sell through the galleries who have been sort of very supportive, and that's worked well. Some of the older work, the remaining examples, are being held back so that I can sort of send them to museums. The intermediate work, there is some remaining, and I am looking at how to list that. Yes, yeah,
got it.
Yeah, so I'll ping you when that's out, and I'll take your credit card number, and I'll say yes.
Sounds good.
Amazing. Rhea, what's next?
So I'm going to be out of action for a bit in January with surgery. I've got a collaboration coming up at the Museum of the Moving Image in March, and then I have, whilst working on the stuff that we've talked about, I've come up with an idea for another project, which I'm trying to get done quickly whilst the iron is hot. Yeah, striking whilst the iron is hot. That currently has the code name of Traitors, and then lots of making art and writing, and getting exasperated with people on the internet who insist that the blockchain is the devil. So yes.
Incredible. Well, I feel like we've kept you now for 2.5 hours, and we should
Time
set you
flies when
free.
you're having fun.
We definitely. having fun.
And
But
Layla,
it's
I've held
unfair
back
to
on
keep you
so
any
many.
longer.
I've held back on so many questions. We could have gone so deep on so many things that we didn't.
I
Yeah.
I am sorry I held you back. But also want Rhea to have a life. So thank you so much, Rhea,
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
for
It's been
making the
brilliant.
time, and good luck with all that's coming up. I know there's going to be big things happening for you soon. So good luck with
Thank
everything.
you. Thank you.
And we are, very much looking forward to your release with Verse, but also just seeing everything else that you do. Thank you for keeping our minds doing backflips with your work.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for everything you do with Verse as well. It's so good to see you exploring and pushing forward with the medium and its place in the world. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Jamie, any other final questions? He's most famous for before we go. No?
I mean, too
Are you
many.
going to Columbo me? Just one more. Just one more thing.
I've got a
Question before
massive
you go.
list, Layla. I've got a massive list, but I'm not going to.
Rhea,
I
just
love
mute
talking
him,
about
Rhea,
this
on
stuff. No,
WhatsApp.
that'd be mean. No, I love talking about this stuff, Jamie. So do feel free to another time to ask anything you would like to. Yes. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Rhea. Have a lovely day and happy 2026 to you again.
Yes. Yeah. Happy 2026,
Take care.
everyone.
See you guys.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks.